Hello and good afternoon. My name is Juergen Steinmetz, joining you from the Breaking News Show, this time from Germany. I'm actually in the city of Duesseldorf, what is close to the famous Rhine River, and I'm at Me and I Hotel, what is a new part of the Hyatt group, and it's kind of a hip hotel. I really enjoy it. It's a little bit different. A lot of young people, they're cutting your hair in the middle of the lobby. Nice restaurants, good rooms are nice, I have to say. It's free minibar, and you have a little seating area, and so it's a nice hotel. And I'm here for the next 5 days, and just got in from Saudi Arabia. So a lot of traveling. How are things with you, Peter? And by the way, the weather is nice, but it was horrible last night, but it's nice now.
Well, good. All right. Well, it's good. So, hi everyone. I'm not in Germany. I am in College Station, Texas. So I just got back from Portugal, and so I've also been doing a little bit of traveling. And before that, I was in a wonderful city in Mexico called Jerez, Mexico, in the state of Zacatecas, which I really enjoyed. It was just really a great place to be. Uh, but I'm now back in College Station for about a week and a half. The weather here is typical summer Texas, hot and humid. So for those of you in the Celsius range, we're between 35 and 39 degrees Celsius. For those of you in Fahrenheit range, we're in the upper 90s. Once in a while, we break 100. So Texas is a place that you got to be brave to be here in the summer because it's definitely hot. And on the eastern side of Texas, it's humid. On the western side, it's dry. So lots is going on. Jürgen, you've been in Saudi Arabia, you've been in Nepal. Of course, there's a whole stuff going on in the world while you've been traveling. And one of the things is, of course, the tragedy yesterday of the submergible, I guess they call it, rather than a submarine that was going to look for the Titanic. And that's a well-known news story. But I think what's really interesting, and then we can talk a little bit about Saudi Arabia, is this is a trend in tourism for people to take more and more daring types of visitations. Where maybe 20 or 30 years ago, the classical trip was to go to Europe or go to the United States. You stay in a nice hotel and you go to a place like Disney World or Disneyland or whatever it happens to be, some sort of a theme park. If you notice, the trend has been down on theme parks. They have been losing population. Instead, we're seeing more and more people not wanting to go to the safety of a theme park, but wanting to really be in risky situations, be it in this is probably was the riskiest of all of them, but we're going to be seeing space tourism, which is a risky form of tourism. We're seeing people do all sorts of racing, and I know in Saudi Arabia they're racing in the desert, and these are extreme forms of tourism that are kind of pushing the outer limits, and that's going to be an interesting situation. The submergible was, in all reality, it was a form of tourism for people who could afford it. We're hoping to see the sunken Titanic, but the question is, at what point does tourism be for the masses, and what point is it going to be a place where we more and more turn it into a risky adventure?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, there is, you have the zip lines, you have many more things, but going into into the unknown, of course, is risky. And I think everyone on board of the submarine knew this, and it's very tragic when it happens. And yes, we don't know if we can call this tourism or if we want to get into. I mean, there's space travel coming up, as said, so that is also risky, perhaps. And
Well, it will be. I mean, all travel is risky, and the word travel comes from, in English, comes from the French word travail, which means hard work. And you're on planes all the time, and I'm on planes, and very often, even getting an upgrade is very difficult, especially in the summer. Travel can be very hard work when you have to get from one place to another. But the real issue is, are people getting bored with normal tourism? Are we having to kind of find out new ways to create adventure travel almost like we're back to the 16th century where, was Columbus a traveler? Was Columbus on a risky mission? Did he think he was going to fall off the earth?
Yeah, and I mean they're risky travel to go to certain countries alone. So you're not gonna catch me going to Afghanistan or going to Sudan right now. And people do that. I mean, they're still saying, okay, we're gonna go. Your son went to Pakistan. I thought he was brave. But it's
Yes. So
it's
there,
you know,
not only, but we are seeing that, there's two forms of tourism there. There's what we call risk tourism and what we might call dark tourism. Now, dark tourism tends to be less risky, but it's the places where tragedies took place. And it seems to me the submarine was a combination of risk tourism and dark tourism because you're going to see a tragedy. Dark tourism is often going to concentration camps or to places like Auschwitz, where great tragedies took place. On the other hand, risk tourism starts something like zip lining that you mentioned, but it's where people are willing to put their life more and more on the line. And I wonder if that says something about society, says something about where we live, and are we over comfortable? In other words, or are we going to see the tourism industry split into two different forms? That which is what you might call classical or safe tourism, like going to a hotel, and a hotel swimming pool, having massage, and then people who want high adventure tourism. Um,
yeah. Yeah, and it would probably be interesting to do a study and find out what age group is taking risks. I would almost bet, without knowing it, that younger people are more inclined to take risks because they're fearless. Young people don't really understand sometimes, there are risks involved, and it just say, oh, it'll be okay. And maybe our generation wouldn't go on a submarine. I don't know. Would you, Peter?
I wouldn't. I don't like going underwater. So even when I swim, I don't swim underwater. I swim on top of the water. But so I might be willing to go in a spaceship, but there's no way I would go in a submarine. But that's Peter Tarlow's issues of water. But I do think your point is a very fair point, and that is that we see in tourism security issues, the number one group of people that tends to be victims of crime. Everyone thinks it's women. And most police departments have special protections for women. That's not true. Men are more victims of crime than are women. And the group that's most victimized are people between the ages of 20 and 30. And that's really strange, except think about it. Young men between the ages of 20 and 30 take higher risks. They're absolutely convinced they're invulnerable, that nothing can happen to them, and that they can defeat the entire world. And you and I both know there's no man, no matter how strong you are, who um, cannot be overcome by a group of people who are locals and know what they're doing. So they often don't report it. They're often ashamed to report it, but you have a much higher probability of young men being victims of crime than you do of women. Women tend to be smarter. They tend to think through where they're going, and they think about the consequences before they take them. Men rush headlong into crises.
Yeah,
So your
and
issue, you make a lot of sense what you say there.
yeah, and in tourism, of course, it's not necessarily also taking risk, but to explore new things, unless you're just this type of person who's going to the same beach resort and staying at the same hotel and taking the same lounge chair every year. That's one type of tourist, but many others want to explore, and that's really all ages. And so the industry is constantly looking for new opportunities. So is Saudi Arabia, the country I just came from. I can give you a little bit of information. We may actually break this news here because it hasn't been published anywhere yet. But the new airline, Riyadh Air, that is striving to become the largest airline in the Middle East, and they are building the largest airport in the world. And they want to become the largest airline in the world, as to speak of. Guess what? They're going to get seaplanes. And that's how they're going to serve the Red Sea area and the hotel resort. So they take you right to your hotel. They're going to be scheduled flights with panoramic windows. And that's the new style of an airline operating domestic flights to certain parts of Saudi Arabia. So everyone is thinking, okay, how can we be different from the other guys? And here's
I think
one.
that's really, I think you just hit the nail on the head. The thing in tourism is we have now been really in the tourism business since the 1950s when we had mass tourism begin. And prior to that, you just had tourism only for the very wealthy prior to World War II. But now people want to distinguish themselves. Going just on a cruise that everybody takes, or going to the same hotel, or going to an all-inclusive, it's always going to have a market. But we're now seeing people who are pushing that, and even in um, such things as theme parks, cruises, um, all-inclusive, they're trying to look to come up with something, a new shtick, something different, something that's
Right.
unique. Because if they don't, they can't distinguish themselves. There's no within the market. It's all the same.
And that's the same, I mean, like with hotels, like the hotel I'm in here now, it's very different from any hotel I've seen to. So that makes it attractive. It's kind of a new style. Where else can you get a haircut in the middle of the lobby every day? And people come up with new ideas, and especially if you go to countries where money doesn't seem to be an object, like Saudi Arabia, like the United Arab Emirates. People can really the imagination is the limit, and there is no limit. So you come up with all kinds of new ideas. If you see some of the restaurants I've seen in these countries, you feel like you're in Futureland somehow.
Yeah.
And that's what, of course, also attractive for a visitor to explore. These are things you don't get necessarily at home, and it's something different. Makes it exciting.
So you're really going to see, I think, a bifurcation here in tourism, or maybe a trifurcation. One level is going to be going towards the future, coming up with things that nobody else has thought of, and such as a haircut in the middle of the lobby. On the other hand, you may also see a pushing of historical trends. In other words, allowing people to see original history, seeing things that from 4,000 years ago or 5,000 years ago. Of course, the Middle East is very rich and in history. And then that's going to be one world. And then the other world is going to be those who are really just looking to vacate their mind. The word vacation is derived from the French word vacances, meaning to vacate your mind. And those people just want to be customer service, will be an essence in that. So how this goes together is going to be a really unique experience. And I think we may not have a tourism industry. We may have multiple simultaneous tourism industries that are parallel to each other, but different from each other.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a lot of move. Tourism is booming everywhere, despite the economy, what is quite surprising. We're all asking the question, how is this going to be maintained in the future? Some of the rates are now going down again. So that means maybe we reached the peak, at least for some parts, for some reasons. And we don't know. And then, of course, we have guys like Putin threatening a nuclear war. How can we maintain tourism? We don't know. So there is still a lot of things.
A nuclear war in Europe, and more of my friends in the diplomatic world do not think a diplomatic war is, a nuclear war is at all. It is a diplomatic war, but a nuclear war is out of the question. A year ago that would have been considered crazy. Today it's less considered crazy. Hopefully, it will never take place. But think about how that would throw Europe into complete tizzy.
And not only Europe. I mean, you heard the statement by the Russian ambassador to the United States saying that it's no problem for any of their missiles to hit any city in the United States. It's a worldwide thing. It's not isolated to Europe or anything else.
Although I think the first probably gunshots would take place in Europe. I don't think the Russians are going to bomb Rio de Janeiro or Buenos Aires.
No, but maybe New York, and I mean, we don't know,
Yes, of course, and we also know that because of spoken wheel when it comes to airlines, if you hit a place like London or New York, the entire air industry ceases. We saw that in 9/11 when the United States closed down its airspace, and literally planes stopped around the world because today there are very few flights from one place. It's not A to B. You usually, go to spoken wheel where you go to a major hub and then you have to transfer to some other place, which makes a lot of sense for the airlines, but it's really putting a lot of eggs in one basket. So that's
Yeah,
going to be an interesting world.
yeah, and talking about airline and airline routes, it depends on what flag carrier you're flying. If you're flying on a US or EU based flag carrier, you're taking different routes. I mean, like for instance, if you take Qatar Airways from Doha to Los Angeles, you will fly over Iran, you go over Afghanistan, you fly straight over Russia, and then you go all the way up to the North Pole almost, because it's the only carrier right now that has equipment being able to fly that far north. No other carrier is doing this. And you're coming back through northern Canada to the US. Now, if you're flying on United Airlines and they don't have flights to Qatar, but they do have flights to Dubai, what is close by, you're not going to touch the Russian territory by any means. So the flight's going to take a little bit longer. And these are big discussions, also specifically the connection between Europe and Asia and even North America and Asia to avoid Russian airspace. And this all depends where your airline is based in. And if you're lucky, like on Turkish Airlines, even though it's a NATO country, they fly everywhere in Russia. And they're taking people, they're flying to Moscow, they're flying to St. Petersburg, and different rules apply to them than flying, for example, on Lufthansa or someone else.
That's even true of the post office. I had a friend who needed to mail a book he was writing with a Russian author and needed to mail a book from the United States to Leningrad. And that was almost impossible.
It's no longer Leningrad. I'm sorry, it's St. Petersburg.
St. Petersburg, yes, all right.
It might be Leningrad again very soon. We don't know.
Yes, yes. Or it might be Putingrad.
Yes, possibly, yes.
But he wanted to send an email, I'm sorry, a book to St. Petersburg or Putingrad or whatever it's called. And it was impossible. So what I had to do is I had to take the book to Israel with me, and then we shipped the book from Israel to Russia because there was no other way to get the book from the United States to St. Petersburg.
No, you can't. I mean,
Yeah.
talking about also the shift in tourism, what I found quite interesting when I was in Dubai for a week on this trip as well. And I can tell you there is a second airport. It's not the main airport in Dubai, but there's a second airport. What is actually from right now, I believe it's one of the largest airports in the world from territory, not from flights. It's in the desert. And guess what? They have traffic coming in from literally any city in Russia constantly, 24 hours a day. Tourists are coming in. And it looks like now Russians are the number two, or if not even the number one arriving tourists. Other shifting is there are a lot of Israeli tourists. You mentioned Israel. Now coming into the United Arab Emirates. And those that were traditionally the number ones are maybe now number 5 or 6, like the Germans and the British. And then, of course, you have a lot of traffic also within the Arab world. So where people come from and how they go is shifting. Ironically, we're talking about sanctions in Russia. I stayed at the Grand Hyatt Hotel, which is a wonderful hotel, but half of the guests were Russians. So the Americans are getting the money again from the Russians. So there's no boycott,
Now, on top of that, if you study the history of sanctions, sanctions don't work. And the sanctions against Russia have not worked at all. They've done nothing more than hurt people in the West and in the United States. But the Russians have made more money than ever before. They are selling to other countries such as China and India and countries that are not participating in these sanctions. And basically, the whole concept of foreign policy where you put sanctions on a country has ended up, we've shot ourselves in the foot. We haven't hurt the Russians, we've hurt ourselves. And that's kind of an interesting thing. That's why tourism, I don't think we should have sanctions. I think I'm a firm believer that in tourism, this is a chance for people to know each other. And instead of separating ourselves from people, we need to be uniting ourselves with people
Absolutely, Peter.
and
And
getting
I
to know
fully,
people.
I couldn't agree more with you,
Yeah.
because tourism is a peace business, and
Right.
some people, even our friend like Louis Damour, said it's the custodian of peace. So yes, and you can only really make peace if you can see someone in the eye,
If I
you know?
if I don't speak to you, how do I have peace? So speaking
Exactly.
about that, maybe one of the things we should just mention a little bit to get people used to it. We will be having in the end of September the World Tourism Network conference in Bali, Indonesia. And while still some of the details are being worked out, I think it's important for people to hear about that, and hopefully people from different parts of the world will want to experience the Bali, experience Bali, and have a wonderful time as and become part of our World Tourism Network, which I think now has 128 nations, if I'm not mistaken.
Actually, it's 132 now.
Okay,
And you find them all listed if you go to WTN.travel. And if you wanted to learn more about our conference, and I'm very glad you brought this up, of course, you click on events on the WTN.travel, or you go directly to time2023.com. That's our website, time2023.com. Those that are selling travel. So if you're in the business of selling travel and you have niche markets, you can actually apply to be hosted. We have airline hosts. We have airlines that we're working with. They include right now Turkish Airlines and Singapore Airlines, and of course, if you're domestically in Indonesia, also Garuda. So just go to time2023.com and apply. If you're not, if you have wanted to promote your own destination, it is an international event. We have tourism boards from all over the world participating, and because Indonesia is one of the largest outbound markets in the world. There are many Indonesians travel, and if you wanted to get be part of this market and these opportunities to get visitors from Indonesia to your country, you should actually be part of time2023.com.
And while you're there, we started off discussing the fact that people are looking for new adventures in new areas. And while certainly Bali is a well-traveled place, there's lots of places in Indonesia that are really open to be explored. And so I'm encouraging people after the conference or before the conference to come to Bali and use Bali as a jumping off point to other parts of Indonesia, because it's a vast country and there's lots to see. And one of the things the World Tourism Network is, we want to encourage not only conferences around the world, but we want to help all parts of each country to use their tourism to the maximum and to gain the maximum amount of economic development.
And of course, WTN World Tourism Network is about the SMEs, the small and medium-sized enterprises and businesses. And it's, of course, you're completely right, Peter, with Indonesia, but also if you look at Bali itself as a destination, it has so many opportunities. It's not just Kuta Beach, where you go and have parties. There's a lot more. I mean, did you know that there is a festival on every given day, a holiday on every given day in some village in Bali? It's amazing what's going on there.
Yes, and you always tease me that in the Jewish world we have a never-ending series of holidays, but they beat us. They have more holidays than we have. So, so if you want to have holidays, matter of fact, if you put Hindu and Hebrews together, you're gonna have 2 or 3 holidays in one day.
You never have to work again, you know.
So maybe that's a good way for us to end this particular conference, this session, and hopefully people will be seeing us on video. And Juergen, you have a wonderful time in Germany. I see lots of people in the background. And are you going to get your hair cut today?
No, I think I'll pass on this. I'll wait till I get home. But in any case, I enjoy this Hype Hotel. I will actually meet my nephew for dinner in the Old Town. And for those that don't know Düsseldorf, I have to do a little bit of advertising for the city I was born in. Düsseldorf, we have the largest entertainment or bar area, what's called the Old Town. There's no place in the world with so many bars and restaurants than Düsseldorf. So it's really, if you're in Germany, you should visit Düsseldorf. It's a wonderful city. It's a very lively city. Things are going on literally on every street corner, and people are sometimes when you don't know people, they appear to be rude sometimes, but they're really friendly people if you get to know them. So
All right,
visit
well,
Düsseldorf, and hopefully,
please, when you're in Old Town, please drink responsibly. And it's Friday night, so I'm going to wish you Shabbat Shalom. And I hope you have a wonderful evening with your nephew and enjoy Germany. Don't eat too many calories and watch what you drink.
well, ironically, my nephew is visiting from New York. He lives in New York. So we're both strangers in our own country. So that'll make it a little bit more interesting, I guess. But yes, Peter, thank you so much. It was good seeing you again, and we're going to have you back soon. For those that missed part of this event, just stay tuned, and most likely it'll start over again. If not, you can also go to breakingnewsshow.com, and you can see this broadcast and many others we did over the years now. And if you ever wanted to be part of us, just click on the contact information, and we'd be happy to consider telling your story, because what eTurbo News is about, it's about hearing stories. Thank you very much, and good evening from Germany, and aloha, since we're based in Hawaii. Good night.
And aloha and Shabbat Shalom to everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.